Yeah, go ahead. All right. Leo, are you able to hear my voice and see the screen?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Go ahead and get started now. Give me 1 second. All right, here we are. So welcome back, everybody. Today is the second part of our second lecture, so lecture 2B. Okay, and we're going to be talking about the beginnings of Christian culture. The first question I'd like to ask is sort of, how did Christian culture develop, and who are these people that helped it develop? And the way I'd like to answer this question is by actually asking another, which is, what is monasticism? All right. You can see the way I'd like to do this is by sort of getting a picture of who Saint Benedict of Nursia is. Okay. We'll see what he had to offer monasticism, and all he had to say about that. And then I put here in the lower panel oh wait, you know what? I think it stopped sharing. Nope, it's still okay? Okay. The raven. When Saint Benedict was a hermit, there was an evil priest that tried to poison him, and a raven that Benedict had befriended took the bread away, flew it away. Is everybody at home still able to hear me and see the slides?
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so Saint Benedict is known as the father of Western monasticism. He was born in the 5th century and died in the 6th. Like Augustine, it's curious that he never became a priest. He was initially interested in being a hermit. Okay, that is somebody who is sort of shut away from the world, yet devoted to God. Well, upon reflection, he thought that he would still like to spend his life as a contemplative, thinking about God and doing things like that, but that it was going to be in a more formalized or organized way. And it was going to be in something called a monastery. And so he is known for founding the very well-known, very famous monastery at Monte Cassino in Italy. Okay, I have it up here that he was inspired by earlier saints like Jerome and Basil, and that's certainly true. And he also was going to give his own unique interpretation of things when he wrote the Rule of Saint Benedict. Okay, the Rule of Saint Benedict is kind of like a student handbook. All right, so it tells you everything that we expect of you, how you're supposed to do things, and so forth. The Rule of Saint Benedict outlines all of his main concerns for living in a monastery. Okay, or what monastical life is. There is a theme that emerges from the rule, and it is this: ora et labora, which in Latin, of course, means pray and work. And I'm not sure for what reason, but in the English language, we always translate to work and pray. We switch it around, but it means pray and work, or work and pray. And it sort of tells you sort of what monastic life was directed towards. It was a very directed and structured existence. And so the 24-hour day was divided into 3 sections, 3 categories of work, prayer, and rest. 8 hours each. 8 hours to work, 8 hours to pray, 8 hours to rest. Okay? That was sort of the division of things. It wasn't like you would work for 8 hours and then go to pray for 8 hours and then you could go to sleep. It wasn't quite like that. They were all interspliced with one another. Okay, that was the idea. And so what you get from that is a very what you might think of a mundane day, or sort of an ordinary day. But Saint Benedict, by adding prayer to it, spiritualizes the whole day. And so the whole day now becomes a sort of act of worship, a liturgical act that is lived out, okay? And it is shared with others. And so that's sort of how monasticism looks from the outset. Let's ask a question about what kind of work was going on. If you take a look at this picture here, you can see that there is it looks like grass down here. Does anybody know what that is? It's not a putting green. Anybody at home know?
Wait, Mr. Laws, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what is this green stuff down here? Not the trees, but this patch of whatever. Anybody know what that is?
Could it be a labyrinth?
It looks like a labyrinth perhaps from up here, but it's in really rigid rows. It's green, small. Yes, very good. It's a vineyard. It's where they were growing grapes. Why were they growing grapes? Yes, for wine, okay? And so, again, we're asking the question, what did their work like? One of the things was creating alcohols and wines, all right, that they could use and sell. One of the things that allowed you to be a monk, or one of the things you had as a monk was spare time, or you had lots of time to devote to things. And so there are a lot of monks who are going to develop recipes. What are recipes? It's like when you're cooking something, right? And your mom and dad are going to make something, they'll maybe use a recipe. And so in the monasteries, they are inventing new recipes and new ways of working in kitchens. And so European and continental gastronomy, food stuff, is changing as well. They're doing another kind of work, which is more academic, because remember we said St. Augustine, when we last met, we said St. Augustine stressed the importance of learning. They're doing another kind of work as well, which is the study of the Bible and the study of manuscripts, and then transcribing and translating those things. It wasn't just the Bible or religious work either. They were translating all kinds of things, all kinds of texts that weren't just religious. There were so many that they were working with and on. Okay, so those were some sort of fields of work that they were involved in. Let's talk about a little bit about the prayer, which is, I have up here this image. They were very interested in prayer, and the important thing to know is, if you're very interested in prayer as a community, clearly liturgy is going to become important to you. And if liturgy is important, which is of course a sung prayer to God, music is going to be of the most importance. And so the monasteries are going to develop interesting modes of music or interesting styles of music, okay? Usually what they would do is take the Psalms or the lyrics of an ancient Christian hymn from the 1st and 2nd centuries, and they would overlay that with ancient Roman chant, okay? They would overlay that with ancient Roman chant. And so as they did that, they were able to develop the chant and expand on it. In a few years, you have Gregorian chant, okay? And we'll hear an example of that on Monday. And so you already have, by the 7th century, a very sophisticated form of music. And again, Gregorian chant will be sort of that, the epitome of these chants, which is developed later, but it has its source in these sort of chants, these ancient Roman chants, okay, with Christian overtones. I think what I'd like to say now is you can see how these monasteries became centers for learning, for community, for growing, for prayer, and for music. They are, in essence, the building blocks to the Western culture or the Christian culture. Before this, culture was just whatever you were before you were a Christian. So if you were Jewish and you converted to Christianity, well, your culture was Jewish. If you were Egyptian, then you had Egyptian culture. If you were Greek, you had Greek culture before, right? Your family became Christian. But by this time, Christians are sort of the main religion in the Western Europe, and their culture is sort of taking its own unique identity. It's developing its own unique identity, okay? And so it's very important to think about the origins of culture, but it's also fun to think about how it was these men and women who lived in monasteries that were the originators or the original influencers of how culture would develop. One interesting thing, by the way, that I haven't mentioned yet is that uh, Saint Benedict is historically given a sister. Okay, history has always spoken of his sister, Saint Scholastica. All right, she, like Saint Benedict, was inspired and chose to start her own community. Okay, she chose to start her own community like he did, and follow God in monastic life. And so they remained close throughout their years together. They remained very close friends until the day they died, until Scholastica died. And so anyway, the point of this lecture is to show you sort of how monasticism is so influential in culture for today. But let's talk a little bit about how it is today. First of all, Benedictines are still around, so you can become a Benedictine if ever that were your vocation. The rule still exists as well. I'm not going to have you read it today. And obviously, if you want to, you can go to a university or hire an education center where Benedictines and their spirituality still plays an important role. Okay, but then why is BMW up here? Did Mr. Revelis just put the wrong picture? No. Okay. So I will tell you. When Bavarian Motor Works, BMW, was at first trying to create a company, they were trying to figure out how to best achieve, creativity, collaboration, and have strong leadership, and for all of those things to work together. Well, it wasn't like the CEO of BMW could just go to Stanford School of Business and get an MBA, okay? Or it wasn't like the CEO could just go to get a degree in finance at the local university at Ohio State, okay? That's not what was available to these people then. And so the innovators who were going to create BMW, what they did was they went to the local Benedictine monastery and they said, how are you structured? How do you create productivity? How do you inspire creativity, right? How do you lead well and strongly? And they adapted the same model that the Benedictines have had for hundreds of years, over 1,000 years, into their own corporate hierarchy. So many businesses did this, but this is just one example. And I thought it would be interesting for you guys because most of us are aware of what a BMW is, right? And we don't typically associate it with any sort of monastic roots. But indeed, many companies partly are founded upon principles that were already established many, many centuries, if not more, years before in monasteries. Okay? And so monasteries are really responsible for interesting gastronomic things like food, certain food dishes, for many kinds of wine. They were owned by the monks, okay, which I know you guys don't partake in. You're not of the age, but maybe your parents or grandparents do, okay, and higher education. And so we're going to see how the monastery is a precursor to the modern university in 2 weeks or next week. And so that was basically my main point today, was to show you how St. Benedict and this way of life was representative of the beginning of Christian culture in Europe. Are there any questions? Anybody at home?
Can you go back to the previous slide?
I think you mean that one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that good?
Yeah.
I'll upload these, by the way, to PowerSchool right now. All right. Thank you very much.